go by that?
I go by whatever people want to call
Okay.
Julie KB.
Okay. And Julie is the executive director of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, and she will provide an overview of the Wisconsin Farmers Union environmental policies and share farmers' concerns related to the environment and family farms. The WFU is a member-driven agricultural organization based out of Chippewa Falls. WFU has been a state leader in sustainable agriculture and grassroots activism since 1930. Farmer members are active in policy and education initiatives to improve water quality, restore soil health, and offer climate change solutions. Julie has a PhD in anthropology from the University of Minnesota and has worked in community-based social and environmental initiatives for over 2 decades. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, everyone. I know some of the faces around the square here, but I don't think I know everybody. Could we do a quick round of introductions?
Sure, I'll start. I'm Cheryl Miller. I'm one of the co-chairs here of HEAT. I'm in a bunch of different environmental groups also, most of you know.
I do know.
And I've known Julie for a while on the League of Women Voters too. That's how we know each other too.
I'm Steve.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The other co-chair, moved to Menominee just about 3 years ago. Very much interested in environmental matters. Retired engineer.
Yes, and we sure appreciate your progeny, Steve, on our staff.
He enjoys it. I appreciate it too. And he does enjoy his work.
Good parenting there, Steve.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'll go down the list of people that I'm seeing here, so everyone doesn't talk over each other. But okay, so yeah, me, Steve, and then I have Chase.
Hi, Julie. I'm Chase Cummings. I'm the new county conservationist here in Dunn County. I was previously county conservationist in Pepin County, which I may have met you at an event or two down there. So
Great. And then I have Sandy White.
Hi, Julie. I'm recently I retired from Stout after 30 years on May 31st, so I'm in your husband's category. And I'm still heavily involved in a lot of groups, so I would welcome you to come to our CFWC Menominee Women's Group. We've got our Dunn County Partnership for Youth. I'm in part of the I'm on the executive board for the Dunn County Democrats, and that one I really want you to come talk to us on several topics. So, but anyway, so good to see you again, and yeah, welcome.
Okay, and then Kathy Stahl.
Hi, Julie. I've had a chance to email with you. I appreciate that. I'm a Dunn County resident, as I think all of us are, and involved with some conservation issues. So thank you for being here.
Great. And then Steve Hansen.
Well, hello, Julie. You know me. I publish with Community, and I'm doing some video work for this committee.
Great. And then Sue Suchting.
Yes. Hi, Julie. I'm most involved with Citizens Climate Lobby, Eau Claire chapter, but I live in Dunn County, and so mainly outreach, education, and working on carbon pricing policy at the federal level. So.
Great. And then Lindsay Ketchel.
Hi, Julie. My name is Lindsay Ketchel. I serve as the executive director of Landmark Conservancy, and we work in 20 counties. I understand your husband has recently joined up my board. Two organizations merged, West Wisconsin Land Trust and Bayfield Regional Conservancy, to create Landmark about 3 years ago. I moved here. I live in Otter Creek, unrecognized area. I'm right on the Otter Creek. It's a class 2 trout stream. I've got about 39 acres of forest. got a lot of very large farms all around me. And then personally, I actually spent about 20 years in local sustainable food work in Vermont and Alaska. So my passion when I first got into this was really about working with farmers to help them find local markets, because my belief was if we had small farms that were viable and profitable, we could actually farm, feed ourselves, and live in balance with nature. In Vermont, that was not a crazy concept, but it seems like every other state it is. Peace it out.
All right, great.
Well, thanks. Yes, good to be reacquainted with everybody and get to know some new folks. I've been stomping around this area for some time. I taught at Stout for a while and was with UW Extension in Eau Claire County, and then regional director. I got to work with a lot of folks in Pepin County over there, Chase, where you come from, but across the entire region where Lindsay now works. I think your territory is my old territory. And then I came to Wisconsin Farmers Union about 3 years ago, higher education, left extension, and went into nonprofit work with a great organization. And I can just report that, I love to get up and go to work every day because it's a good organization and I work with absolutely fantastic people. So let me just put that out there that I'm only one person among a team of about 16 people that are highly dedicated to many of the same values that I think your organization, your group here represents. And having worked in community organizing for most of my career, I really appreciate you all and the work that you're doing. It's vital, and it's what keeps us all strong, our communities thriving. So let me just extend my gratitude to all of you. So when you asked me to come talk about environmental topics in the Farmers Union, I'm like, well, I've got this policy book that is just chock full of all sorts of environmental policy, platforms, desires that really come from the grassroots. And so I don't really know exactly what to focus on that might be of interest, but what I thought I might do is just talk a little bit about the Farmers Union, underscore a few programs that highlight our mission, and then just open it up for some questions from you all, so I can get a little bit more into the realm of interest where you might be. Some of you may know the Farmers Union. Some of you are members, Steve over there. It's a group that is based nationally. First of all, there is a National Farmers Union, and it was started way back in 1902. And our Wisconsin Farmers Union started in 1930. And so if you think about where we came from and the rise of progressivism in the United States and the New Deal and the idea that, government should work for ordinary people, I think that's really where our heart is and where you will still see all of our policy resides. So we're probably what you might call a little bit more progressive leaning agricultural organization. I would say we fight for family farms and independent farms. And we are, based really close to you all. We started right there in Elk Mound. The first Farmers Union meetings were there. And then we moved over to Chippewa Falls, where we still reside. But we have chapters all over the state and national state partners in 33 states across the United States. In Wisconsin, we're the second biggest agriculture organization. We have over 2,000 members, and those are often family memberships, which means, we're probably closer to 4,000 or 5,000 individuals in the organization. And you don't have to be a farmer to be in the Farmers Union. We have plenty of folks who get involved with us because they're environmental advocates, or they believe they're pro-democracy. They believe they're anti-gerrymandering, or they're pro-racial justice. And so they get involved in the Farmers Union because we've got a wide platform. We also have a real big tent philosophy. And I'm telling you, it was a windy year for big tents because it was difficult to really keep everybody from, left-leaning socialist members all the way to people that are very much in support of Trump and, on the far right. Those folks can all be found under the Farmers Union tent. believing in the same kind of values, but nevertheless may be represented by different political stripes. And so it was a tough year to have people. I mean, people are upset. They're radicalized to some extent, and they're not always as willing to listen. But I am really, really proud of this legacy that we've established, this grassroots democratic process in the Farmers Union. And if you've never been to one of our conventions, I would say that if you came there, you would be shocked at what you saw on the floor of the policy floor. I mean, the policy floor, because you have people that are passionate about all these different topics, getting up, speaking their mind in front of people, having read, having created policy, and they push it forward. And then that becomes our platform, you know, to lobby on and to educate on and to rally and build power around for forever if it stays in the policy book. And people, you know, really appreciate that democracy can thrive and that people from very different backgrounds can get along. And it's exciting because people are passionate about things like whether or not milk is served in school, whole milk is served in schools, or whether or not wolves are delisted, or you name it, any other number of topics. It becomes very passionate, but yeah, there's a process by which people get along and determine policy, you know, so it's a really amazing thing to watch. And that grassroots policy has been around a long time in our organization. So if you look at what our mission is, it's a triangle, and on the bottom is education. And then we have cooperation as part of our mission, and then also political engagement. So we lobby, we educate, we get people involved in the political process, and we try to build co-ops and cooperate as well with partner organizations and share information. So I'm just gonna follow that mission and describe a few different environmental oriented programs and policies that we have for, just to help you, I guess, illustrate what we're all about. And I think I can probably share my screen here, but in terms of education, we really believe, of course, that's the foundation of the triangle. It's what we do. Have any of you ever been to Camp Kenwood at Lake Wissota? That's owned by the Farmers Union. And that's where we do children's camps, youth camps all summer. And we also host a lot of other educational activities out there. That's been around since like the 1940s. Built by volunteers right there on beautiful Lake Wissota. So I'd invite any of you, if you have interest in having a meeting or anything like that, you know, we'll try to connect with you. But there's a lot of education around cooperatives, around environmental issues, sustainable agriculture, world trade issues that we really teach through a youth camp, and kids get involved in very much interactive, you know, hands-on kinds of activities, and they can go through a series of programs and graduate as a torchbearer in the organization, which really is kind of a ritual of rite of passage, if you will, where, you know, they become stewards, they become involved citizens and carry the torch for the next generation. And so that's pretty cool. Also, another program that I like to highlight that I think I have pulled up here, let me just pull it up here, is the WeWick program, which is a brand new program that I'd like to share with you all. Hold on just a second here. It's not appearing on my screen. Sorry, it was not appearing. I'm having a little technical difficulty. Wisconsin Women in Conservation is a new program that we've launched with several partners of ours. We are not the lead organization. Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Wisconsin Women in Conservation is a cooperative effort between 5 different organizations. It's Michael Field's Agriculture Institute. It is us, of course, Wisconsin Farmers Union, Moses, based out of Spring Valley, a Midwest organic environmental service, education and services, and Renewing the Countryside. And it is a program that really focuses on getting women involved in conservation programs that they may not have really tuned into before. And part of that is just because of that many programs are oriented towards men, right? Nutrient management programs and cover crop programs and things have traditionally been built around male farmers, white male farmers in particular. And so this is an effort to really pull together women and have them study from each other in a peer-to-peer kind of situation, and then get matched with mentors across the state that then can help guide them on conservation practices that they can implement on their own land. And so we've had a couple breakout seminars this last couple months, and they've gone really well online, but we're going to have field days and get people out on farms and really studying from women who have implemented everything from like pollinator gardens to bumper to cover crops and you know, strips and restored prairies, all that kind of stuff. But the most important thing is we're going to try to get them connected to the resources that they might need to make that possible. So in RCS, for example, or, you know, FSA, getting loans, getting reimbursements for the practices that they might implement, and trying to create a more organic situation so that women know who they can go to and where they can find support. So that's a pretty cool program, and anybody that's interested in conservation that's a woman we're glad to welcome to those programs. It is a women learning centered environment, but we certainly know that women bring that knowledge back to whomever they're in relationship with. And so spread the word on that one. So those are a couple education programs. We also do a lot of grazing education, and we do soil health education. And so we partner a lot with people to amplify their programs as well. Our big endeavor that we did this last spring was on meat processing, which doesn't relate as much to, you know, the topic today, but nevertheless, we really got people engaged and politically engaged as well on that important topic, and trying to restore some of our processing capabilities in the state of Wisconsin. So any questions about education programs? Maybe you've attended some. I don't know.
Could you give us a broad brush on
I
what
did.
some of them might be?
Sure. Yeah. We're going to have a lot more focus on climate change, Steve. That was every year our members ask for certain priority policies. And this year, climate change, farmers on climate change was elevated, as well as dairy crisis, which has gone on for quite some time. It keeps coming back every year. A very wicked problem, but we'll be doing a lot more education around climate change, and also we'll continue to work on meat processing this year, have some more education topics on that. And of course, water quality is a big deal, because you should know more about that, because your son's been really involved as our watershed coordinator for the last few years. And that's also educational and cooperative. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth, but you know, educating people on how to begin to plan for cover crops, or how to begin to transition from like a confined animal operation, for example, to a grazing operation. Those are all really big transitions that farmers often are fearful of making, and they're taking a lot of risk in doing it. And so having support systems around them to make those changes is incredibly important, as well as financing.
Yes, cost sharing.
Right. Well, good. I'll talk a little bit more about cooperation endeavors that we have. We have started up cooperatives throughout our entire history. One of our biggest that we were early on involved with was actually Cenex, which started as a farmers union co-op. But you still can drive around the countryside. Have any of you driven through Ridgeland and seen the farmers co-op little, building as you come into town? Those are all legacy buildings, and that really reflect our past of really encouraging groups to come together in cooperatives, which is a more economic, justice-oriented model of business that really makes sure that people have a stake in their livelihood and the decisions that are made around their investments. And so we still advocate strongly for co-ops and help them form. One of the ones that we started, helped start recently is the South Central Hemp Co-op located in South Central Wisconsin. That's a group of Farmers Union members who wanted to grow hemp. And they started their own co-op, and we helped find some resourcing for them, help with their website development and a few other things financially primarily, but also connecting them with experts in co-op law and co-op formation, them get started. And so there's the traditional co-op model, but just a lot of cooperation with other groups in order to make things happen, right? So we have a solar project that we started with some financing from Farmers Union Industries, which is a big organization that we're partnered in, a financial partner in, and we get a lot of our money from. And we help farmers with big loans in order to get solar installations on their farm. And that really required, of course, bigger financing and bigger agreements, more complex agreements. Also some wind energy projects that we've cooperated on. And the one that you might be most familiar with in your area really has to do with the Mississippi River Watershed, where we have partnered with the McKnight Foundation as well as 4 counties, including Dunn County, in order to kick off producer-led watershed groups. And Bill Hogseth was, he's just recently moved on to a new position at Farmers Union, but though he's been the coordinator for the last 1.5 years or almost 2 years now with that program and helping farmers lead other farmers into conservation practices. And that one's focused a lot on soil health. So establishment of cover crops, creating buffer strips, and doing a lot of education, peer-to-peer education, because that's how farmers learn best, is from other farmers. And so you'll see a lot of interest in carbon sequestration and all kinds of things and educational topics on that. So I'm sure, Chase, you'll be working a lot with our new watershed coordinator as soon as they're hired. But those are just some cooperative endeavors. Any questions at all about it? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you were waggling my finger, but could you talk a little bit? One of the big concerns that we had an ad hoc groundwater committee in Dunn County, and one of the big concerns that we identified was expanding markets. We've got soybeans and corn, soybeans and corn, soybeans and corn, and how to expand markets. And I'm interested that you have a hemp cooperative in your thinking about those policies and projects. Has there been a lot of discussion, or at least even some discussion in your group, about how to expand markets so that we can help farmers get off of a reliance upon a very narrow monoculture kind of approach to things? I know that small farmers can be maybe a little more flexible in terms of their markets. But anyway, I'm making my question too long. You know where I'm going.
Oh, yeah. This is pretty much a daily conversation at the Farmers Union. It's both expansion of markets and trying to create, supply chains, right, that work like with a local food shed, for example. We do some of that work. We don't, but it's incredibly complicated. The entire economic system really isn't built to help that out,
Right.
to help out the big ag guys, right? That's what economy of scale is so built out now. And there's so much consolidation in agriculture that creating a smaller food shed, for example, or a smaller supply chain that really works, that makes sure that everybody is well paid in it, is actually like David and Goliath, unfortunately.
Yep.
So you'll see a lot of our policy that's in this book is antitrust and calls for, really actually enforcing the antitrust, rules that exist in this country, because that is really the ticket. I mean, you can have all the goodwill that you want about going to like a grazing operation, but if there are no markets for you, there's no support for your marketing, there's no transition reimbursements and things like that, then you're fighting against, all odds, right, in order to make that happen. And so we've been advocating for that. And Catherine, you'll see in the governor's budget this year in the state of Wisconsin, there are several different initiatives that really are focused on helping farmers in that transition. And those were things we asked for when we met with his staff. So.
How do we up that? Because when I listen to different conservation groups talking about this, you know, and I'm not talking about Farmers Union here, but some of the other major conservation groups, you know, we're talking about budget conversations. You know, these programs or this helping, this marketing is not only do, or, you know, well, one of the things we could talk about is, you know, with our legislators. But do you have other thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think there's I mean, it's all about organizing, right? Really, and raising awareness, first of all. Do consumers know where their food comes from? Do they know that how it either helps find solutions for climate change or actually pushes it into, you know, further destruction? People are not aware of this. The first time that I've heard monopolies being brought up in the way that they are right now was when I was a girl and they busted up AT&T. And now it's again focused on the big tech companies and how they're controlling the market. But really, this has been going on in agriculture, you know, since the 80s for sure. And we did bust them up during the New Deal. And farmers actually were close to parity in many cases, which means they were actually getting paid for their input costs. And it was reflected in the market. So it's finding new markets, Catherine, but also it's decreasing the overproduction that we currently have in our system. Because, you know, if you think about it just from a pure free market perspective, supply and demand is completely out of balance in the agriculture world. And that's but yet the system drives on for monocropping and for commodity, you know, and export, right? And it's all supported by a global economy. And that's a really tough thing to crack. So we're also calling in the Farmers Union for supply management, which would put some floor on, you know, prices, as well as bring down, like help control the oversupply of milk, the oversupply of soybean and corn. And it's an uphill battle, but nevertheless, it's so out of whack that farmers just continue to get paid less and produce more.
Right. But that was also, I mean, sorry, I have a lot of ag
No,
stuff. I have a couple
yeah.
quick questions, but
No, go
that's
ahead.
been the frame that we keep on providing these tools and resources so they can produce more milk, and we shoot bovine hormones into cows so they can produce more. But in the end, the farmer was never going to get more money out of it. It was always about somebody else's well-being and not the agricultural family and community's well-being. One project I did help involve in Vermont, it was a farm viability program. And what we did is we took sales tax. So every time a transaction of a home occurred in the state, a percentage of that transaction went into a farm viability program. We brought in experts to work individually with farmers to draft business plans for their farm, focused on viability and reduced extension agents' influencing of those farmers' business models. And as a result of implementing some of those things, we were able to break through some of those challenges, but it is so time consuming. But I also think, in my other observation, I'm just so challenged by Wisconsin's body politics. And I don't know if you've experienced this too, but I feel like I'm in community and everyone cares and wants these long-term solutions. But as soon as you start to interface with elected officials in Madison, it's like their brains go completely 180 and are completely disconnected, but they'll kind of say some of the right words, but none of their actions are lining up to the resources we need in our communities. And I'm so dumbfounded by how do we break that? Because I don't know we're going to get through any of this until we actually get a political system that works for us. Sorry.
Well, I would say then you need to look up the entire gerrymandering part of the policy, because we've been fighting gerrymandering pretty hardcore, Lindsay, for 6 years in the Farmers Union, but they don't have to listen to us.
Yeah.
That's reality.
So I guess then my other real quick question, Steve, and I apologize, but so in my little community though, where I live, I've got some really large scale farmers who are actually farming for fuel. So this is not farming for food. And I'm deeply concerned that there is a disconnect about the environmental impact from that type of ag production to produce a little bit of energy and the loss of water. I think it was used at some point to try to figure out how to build prosperity in rural areas, but I'm deeply concerned that we're actually setting ourselves up to do damage to our environment. And I don't even know if those farmers, what kind of margins they're even making for the fuel market. But if we're going to go green and all the corporations are going green, I think we have to go green then with our energy productions in this state. And so to me, it just seems crazy to be producing energy when you should be using it for food. Anyway, that's my own little.
It's a controversial topic, and I hear both sides of it. I mean, we have great commodity growers, right? And the farmers union, as well as folks who are very concerned about environmental, about like they really are advocates for the Green New Deal. And so it's one of the most robust conversations that I think we have in the farmers union. And for many farmers, of course, it's really about the livelihood, and the economy is still supporting ethanol production. Not honestly, but I mean, they have, in at least the last couple administrations has. And so for them, it's still a way to stay viable farming, even though they are probably, also aware, at least to some extent, that it won't last for long, and it shouldn't probably last for very long. But right now, that's the system that supports them. Until there's a transition economy, it's going to be really difficult to get folks to switch over to, for example. It's just a huge leap.
No, and these are huge farms too.
Yeah, they're big farms.
These aren't little family farms growing up. This is.
Yeah, they're big. Well, it's the system's promoting more and more consolidation and more.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. It's been fun to talk.
Steve, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Julie, you mentioned a little while ago about your focus on climate change, and then you commented on helping farmers develop solar and wind on their farms. And then I couldn't help but, when you were talking about the solar and the wind, I couldn't help but think of the group in Madison called Renew Wisconsin. And I assume that there's some probably collaboration going on in your efforts with that.
I recognize the group, but I can't say that I've worked with them one-to-one, but I bet on staff has over the last few years. Again, I'm still fairly new, 3 years in.
Yeah.
Years in, so I haven't worked with them, but I just fielded a call this morning from a fellow whose organization is offering further discounts beyond the government solar, reimbursements. And so we'll try to get that word out, for example, to farmers that, this organization is offering extra support for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
the first guy I ever had contact with at Renew Wisconsin was a fellow by the name of Tyler Hubner. And he has since been, Governor Evers asked Tyler to become part of his staff. And exactly what he's doing, I don't know. And then the person who's heading it up now, her name is, her last name is Allen, A-L-L-E-N. It might be Julie. And it's a small group. I want to say less than 10 people in the organization. But anyway, I thought of them when you were talking about your programs.
Yeah, we're hopeful that with the Biden administration that we might see a little bit more support for solar, for wind energy. And Bill was part of this climate change report. This just came out. This is Governor Evers' climate change task force. There's some great recommendations in here for state policies that could take effect. And then also, just as a side note, we did produce a video on farmers and climate change this year, interviewing some of our members, and you can find that on our website under what we do. Climate change has got its own webpage under there. Hitting up the point that Lindsay really raises is like, what's farmers' role in this? And it's talking to farmers about what they believe their role is and what some of the struggles are for them personally. But these producer-led watersheds are a great start, but incentives would be good. Iowa does a program where they give you an insurance break for every acre that you put into cover crops. Then you get a substantial reduction on your insurance And, you know, it helps prevent flooding. Besides being good for the climate, it helps prevent flooding as well. And so for the insurance companies bought in, we could do something like that in Wisconsin. We don't have to wait for change to come from DC, you know, but anyway, that's a long topic. We could talk about it.
Yeah. You know, on your, on the upcoming budget hearing here on April 22nd, what is the Farmers Union? We had a little discussion on our own meeting on this. But what does the Farmers Union see as their top 1 or 2 bullet points?
Well, when we met with Governor Evers' staff, let's see if I can remember back on the list of things that we talked to them about. Well, meat processing was a big deal, and we did get, in fact, we got everything that we asked for except for antitrust work. We had about 5 or 6 different things that we, you know, were asking for, but we wanted the Attorney General to work on antitrust. But you know, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Again, David and Goliath, but pretty much, I mean, the governor's budget actually is rich with support for rural communities. We're really, really pleased at many of the suggestions. Everything from rural broadband, which was something that we've been asking for a long time, to the meat processing support, a grazing support across the state. You know, there's a lot in there. And so we did not go to Madison in our normal way and lobby in one big fell swoop. We are actually sending our members to the Joint Finance Committee hearings and really trying to rally the troops on that. And then Bill Hogseth is leading deep canvassing efforts on badger expansion. So we're actually focusing in on a couple areas, couple sensitive, maybe leaning areas in the state. And he and his teams of field organizers are putting pressure on those elected officials on badger care in those areas through this tactic, organizing tactic called deep canvassing.
Mm-hmm.
Basically is people telling their stories in a very short amount of time and compelling to the humanity and other people to listen to them on the phone or face to face in order to change, you know, their opinion and really support an issue. It's a very effective organizing tactic that was used on some pretty wicked problems in other states. And so Bill is really our leading expert on the staff on deep canvassing and leading those efforts. And we'll be doing that going on different topics too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So the last thing I was just gonna talk a little bit about and get some feedback from you on is the political engagement that we do. So we do have a couple of people on staff who are paid lobbyists. That sounds so bad. I mean,
No, it's good.
but it's like, how else are you gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
So, but we also really try to do a lot of grassroots organizing and get people involved in whatever opportunities that come our way. So on gerrymandering, for example, we produced this like kick-ass little video on gerrymandering this summer. And because it's hard to understand, it's kind of wonky, right? A wonky topic for people. They don't always get it. And we produced this little video. It was shared at a Marathon County Board of Supervisors meeting, and they voted that day to take up the resolution against gerrymandering. We also were pressuring people from the field because we had our summer staff calling people in Marathon County, asking them to call their elected county board of supervisors that day. So they were hearing it from multiple sides, and it was effective because they did pass the resolution. That's an example of how we might approach things. So we're pressuring, our lobbyists are pressuring people at in Madison and DC both. And then we've got field organizers and do action alerts and things for our members across, you know, and especially in rural areas across Wisconsin to really put the heat on. We also do things like bird dogging, you know, so if we knew that Sunny Purdue was going to be at the big dairy expo in Madison, and we planted dairy farmers in the audience that drilled them, you know, and that was when he spoke out. The truth of what he felt anyway was that get bigger, get out. You remember that?
Yep. Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, he spilled it. He really spilled it out right there. And that was one of our members who actually asked him that question. So bird dog people, we have bumper stickers, yard signs, we've got people prepared to go testify. We do a lot of like stories and get people and coach our members on how to tell their story effectively so that people will listen. So a lot of organizing going on at the Farmers Union. We sent hordes of people to the livestock sighting opportunities across the state in 2019 and 2020. And as well as in our 151, we sent folks to testify on that. Climate change, we have people at the national and the state level that are on important boards, that are task force that are working on climate change. And we do a lot of work on grazing and trying to get grazing, especially of grazing of perennial grasses, supported by institutional powers, because we feel that's a great way to preserve soil health, promote local economy, and keep farmers on the land, as well as help with climate change. So those are some efforts. I mean, we've got folks going all the time. It's a great crew, and lots of folks across the state, lots of really active members. I mean, it's a passionate group of people.
Yeah.
And I really admire everybody that I get to work with.
Mm.
Specific questions that you, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you mentioned your wonky video on gerrymandering. Is that on your website?
It's not that wonky, but the subject is
It's
wonky.
wonky, right? Yeah.
De-wonkify it, if you will.
Yeah.
And just really explain, like, what does it do? Why should we care? The what of it, and it's a short little 6-minute video.
It's on your website.
Yeah, it's under, let's see, I thought I might have that pulled up too.
Yeah.
Well, just go ahead and ask me questions while I'm searching for it.
Oh, no, I'll find it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find.
Yep.
Yeah, Julie, you mentioned that you had a program helping or you help people transition from CAFO to grazing.
Well, we help them find resources to do that. I don't say it's not us just lifting them over. It's like so complicated, yeah.
Have you seen a substantial number across the state interested in that? What has been what's your thermostat going on that? And maybe even within Dunn County, Chase probably has a sense of that in our area
Chase
too.
probably knows even better than I do, certainly, but I think there's an interest in it. I mean, they're a little spooked because markets are because they're having a hard time finding people to process, right? So sometimes there's a bump in the supply chain that really makes it difficult. It's a big undertaking. We have folks of all stripes. So we got people that do direct marketing and have like a meat CSA, right? Then we also have people who sell into larger livestock, like to equity, for example, and put them right on the market. And we even have a lot of interest in people doing like the end processing right now. So creating like a cooperative of producers and meat processors and then chefs who will all work together. And so instead of like trying to do the processing on half a carcass or a carcass at the shop, then you send half a carcass off to like a chef in Madison and they make artisanal sausage out of it or whatever. And you're in a cooperative so that everybody is benefiting from that. And those are hard to create. Oh my God, they're so hard to create. Vermont has done a good job and they put a hell of a lot of emphasis on it. And
they had a lot of resources to it, and they made it a priority. I keep on trying, all the other states I've worked at, I keep on saying, if your leadership up here says it's something important, it's amazing 30 years later, 40 years later, how it just is part of the culture and there's no questioning. We valued little small family farms and we wanted them to sustain. But I go here and I'm like, how can you not care about little family farms?
Well,
What's wrong with you people?
The question to both of you, to Julie and Lindsay is how do we get that? I'm hearing you say that that's very hard to get going, and then I suppose part of that is the culture of being a farmer, being an individual employer, or well, many farms are have multi employees, but kind of an independent kind of spirit. But how do we build on that so we can get something locally going?
Yeah.
It's what I've witnessed, and it doesn't matter what political party is in office, is that big ag really has a big footprint and oftentimes farmers do pull together, even if they feel like they're getting squashed by big ag, they'll still pull together with large ag. And that's pretty true in North Dakota. It's true here. And so oftentimes administrations do not separate groups out under the ag umbrella. They see it kind of all together, and farmers often see themselves as all together. So if you're going to go after this CAFO that's coming in Polk County, for example, and community members are opposed to that $26,000 or $1,000, hog operation, I have to stick with them because they might come after me next.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right. And so there's definitely that kind of tendency, I think, within agricultural groups to band together, even if you have to kind of like swallow, what you don't want to in order.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely see that. But I think educating elected officials that not all agriculture is the same is really important. And right now we feel like there's a critical moment because people did see how fragile it is, right? They did see how their supply chains can break down and how they might not have any protein, for example, or toilet paper or whatever. And so because everything is on these massive, scale of economy, they're fragile. And so I think this is a moment to we need to do better consumer education on the differences of like, who do you really want to control your agriculture?
Mm-hmm.
That's the ultimate question.
Well, and I also do think that the private individual in their consumption has enormous power. And I feel that the consumer is saying, we want green, we want more organic, we want to care about the planet and how we eat. That force is going to, I think, impact this long term, but I'm so afraid it's going to take too long to move the industry to be more receptive to those types of markets. But you are seeing some of these larger cooperatives jump on the green stuff. And then I do think I agree with you 100% culturally. My experience has been most farmers feel that they're under attack, they're under siege by government people, by extension people, by their neighbors. Nobody understands them. Nobody cares about them. Poor, 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 poor me. And then they just feel like they're under some sort of siege. And I've always lived in rural areas with rural farmers, and I've gotten to be friendly with them. They're pretty quiet, but they're very untrusting in general too, I think, as part of their community too. I mean, I think if you want to unpack some of this stuff, and that's why going farmer to farmer, because they'll listen to another farmer. They're not going to listen to another extension agent. I think they feel like they've been so screwed. So,
but here's a question: are we missing something here? And let me back off. I just finished reading a book called Made in China, and it so graphically told a story of my purchasing and where I purchase and the impact that's had on individuals. Are we missing something here in terms of having farmers tell their story about what's happening because of us not buying locally? Or, are we missing stories? On the Wisconsin Water Week, they had a farmer talk about what he was trying to do in selling locally and his challenges. More people needed to hear this. This guy was singing to the chorus already. He has heat, or do we have some responsibility in terms of education, trying to get the farmer's story out, not just about cover crops? Because, anybody who's paying attention has heard about cover crops and grazing now quite a lot. But the stories about individual farmers and what they need to do to be able to sustain themselves.
Right. I think you're right. I mean, I think that voice is really missing a lot, and it gets often overpowered by this general narrative about agriculture in general. But we did produce a video also on on monopolies and farmers' perspectives on monopolies and what they've seen change in their lifetime. That's also on our website. And it just talks about, like, you know, in my town, there used to be all these implement dealers. We used to be able to choose which cheese factory we sold milk to. And now we don't even, you know, we can't even survive anymore. And so it's a very short, again, a short video, but we're trying to do that in the Farmers Union, and we could use your help. So I think sharing some of those videos, following websites that really focus on small independent farmers and telling their story, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. And it got picked up a lot last year because Wisconsin was ground zero in, you know, the presidential race, right? And so we had Washington Post here, New York Times. We got covered like you can't believe last year. And so we really ramped up our efforts because we knew that they were focused on us. So it was a good year last year, getting farmers' voices heard, I think, in some circles. But Pete, you're right, Catherine. People don't really get the fact that farmers can't fight Monsanto. They can't fight GBS and some of these. I mean, you know, when 85% of the beef supply is tied up within 4 companies, we're all in jeopardy.
I think the other sadder
Going down
story
first.
to all of this too, Kathy, is the actual impact to small rural towns. Because the real truth is that's what's dying. And that's what's been dying since the 1980s. That's been my big passion, you know, these little towns. And now there aren't equipment little dealers anymore. And so when I hear politicians say ag and forestry are the underpinnings of our rural economy, I'm like, no, they're not anymore. And so what are those, like the Ashlands, what are they doing to survive? And how do we bring young people back into our communities to try to create jobs? But if you don't have broadband, like I don't in my house, I'm an ED and I can't even function professionally in my home. So how do you expect to recruit professionals to want to build a rural economy in Wisconsin when you don't even have the infrastructure to do it? I think this is going to be a real challenge.
Well, I would tell your story at the Joint Finance Committee meeting if you could be on there, Lindsay,
Yeah.
because that's a really great example. And Otter Creek is just right in that dead zone, right?
Oh, I'm dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
These guys know I'm in my
Mhm.
car on side of the roads being in these meetings with these people. It's like crazy.
Crazy.
Back to share, the Dunn County Democrats, we went and we had about 8 local leaders here do a listening session with us, with our executive board. And let me tell you, broadband was on top of the list, as it needs to be it needs to be equal. We need to equalize everything with what's happened this last year with the pandemic, with where it was needed for education. And we need to, should be a top priority, and it will be what we're going to be speaking out against, that I know.
And can I just share with you guys too? My main phone line went down and my internet 10 days before a technician will come out. 10 days without a hard line or any internet. And this is the 5th time since I've lived in this house for 3 years that this has happened. How do you run a business under those frames? It's impossible. That's the part that, and so you talk about that phone company knows there's no competition. They don't have to service me well. But if I lived in Menominee and I could pick between 3 phone companies, I damn well will get service in 24 hours. That's how rural people are treated in this town. It's terrible in my mind. And that's just a little story.
It's where some of the resentment comes from, right? I mean, Kathy Kramer wrote that
It
book,
covers
The
a lot of
Politics
Dunn
of
County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're
Julie, I
angry.
know you used to work with Extension
Julie.
heavily, and with the way that has gotten reorganized in the state of Wisconsin, have you seen a major impact too on the local farmers and their access to resources that they should have, because we've so depleted what's going on with Extension?
Well, I think that they've asked for more ag extension agents, right, under the governor's budget as well. But yeah, I mean, it's the reorganization. And the 2 things happened: the reorganization, and then also getting under UW-Madison. So they got 2 double whammies there. I mean, like, that's a lot of change for any big complex organization like Extension. And so I think they're just reeling. I mean, I'm sure they'll recover, but they are reeling, I think, a bit from those massive changes that they had to undertake. And I was part of a lot of that before I came to Wisconsin Farmers Union. And, you know, we had one of the strongest extension services in the country. And
I know.
and it is really changing rapidly and probably moving a little bit away from like a more independent, community-based kind of extension and towards a more centralized kind of system. So speak out if you see things. I mean, you know, use your political voice. They need from everybody.
Hey, Julie, I had a question.
Julie,
You know, earlier
Julie,
you said, you know, trying to put politics aside and how difficult it was last year. And, you know, I mean, we all know a lot of conservative farmers don't believe in climate change, or when you say that word, it's considered a liberal word or a phrase. And, you know, they might think like government takeover, my liberties will be taken away, that kind of a thing. How did you guys overcome that? Did you, I mean, obviously farmers must know there's something different the last number of years, you know, but did you reframe it? How did you get across? How did you guys work together on that?
Well, I think one thing that really helped, Cheryl, was that we really put farmers at the forefront of it, because the truth of the matter is farmers really haven't had a strong voice in the Green New Deal or some of the big climate change endeavors, and yet they're in a position to make the most change, right? They're first affected by it, but also the ones that can really help shift over to a more green economy. And I feel like a lot of farmers just feel like they weren't being listened to or didn't have a voice in anything. And so just state level, having Bill Hogseth actually on the governor's task force and being acquainted with a lot of farmers, he went back to them and asked them for suggestions and took those forward. A lot of the farmers he works with are in the Farm Bureau, and they are perhaps a little bit more conservative, even though they're, you know, doing a lot of great practices. And so I think they just want to be heard. They want to be part of the solution and not have big government come down on them and just whatever the East Coast elites feel like climate change solution should look like. And so creating that space for them at the table was really the big first step in the Farmers Union. And so most of our work really calls for farmer engagement and also transition support, you know. So if you want people to move into a different kind of economy, different type of farming practice, you have to be able to help them get to that level. And so moving from a dairy operation to a grazing operation is no small feat. And, you know, a ton of risk in it for farmers, right? I mean, their whole livelihood is on the line. And until people understand that, it's not like me like changing the color of my hair or something. I mean, these are life-changing practices that are gonna have to be implemented. And so people need support. And just having that kind of language, I think, went a long way, because most farmers realize something is gonna happen and you be at the table or you'll be eaten, right? You'll be on the menu if you're not at the table. So.
Great, thanks. Okay, any other questions for Julie?
This is really good, Julie. Really
Oh, it's so good
appreciate
to
it.
talk to everybody. Yeah, good to see some familiar faces and some new ones that I just would encourage you to get involved in those state budget hearings that are going to take place. And, you know, you're all welcome to join the Farmers Union. We're right up the road. And I used to live there in Menominee. And so I have a special place in my heart always for Menominee and that area. But we can do a lot in this area where there's a lot of movers and shakers in the Chippewa Valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're living in Chippewa. That's my old haunting
I'm
ground.
living in your old neighborhood, Steve.
Where-
Wissota Woods.
Oh, yeah. Well, that wasn't where I grew up, but yeah, no, I lived there for probably 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway,
Might
well,
be
I'll look forward to
close.
having a beer with you guys someplace, you know, the next meeting, okay?
It'll be a
Hey.
Devil's Punch
Hey.
Bowl brew.
Yeah,
Hey, all right.
exactly.
Did you hear about our brew?
Oh, yeah. I hear about all Landmark Conservancy stuff.
I don't know if the rest of you guys have heard about this, but the local brewery here is doing a fundraising for us for the Devil's Punch Bowl. So they literally bottled Devil's Punch Bowl brew. You can buy it retail. And 100% of the proceeds are going to the stairs. I just thought
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
just way too much fun.
That was that
Lindsay,
between
is that
Nonic
Nonic?
Brewery and Lucette?
Yep,
Was that
Which
it?
ones?
Yeah, yeah, that was one, that's wonderful.
yep. So we're pretty happy with that one.
I have a 6-pack in my fridge right now.
Steve is
I'm gonna go get
cutting
one.
edge. Cutting
Steve
edge
will
Steve
be-
Hansen.
I
Steve will be
apologize, I
over in
gotta
a
go.
half hour.
Bye, guys. Sorry, I got another call I gotta jump on.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
right,
Thanks for
Julie,
having me
thank
you.
today.
Yeah, thank you
Okay.
so much. And if we ever have any questions, we can get a hold of you, correct?
Yes, yes. And I'll see you at the league event, Cheryl.
Sounds good. All right, I gotta